Ready. Ready. Ready.
Hello, welcome to Enlightning. Today we're here with Andrew Block, who's going to teach us about SOPS, which stands for Secrets Operations. Andrew, tell us about yourself, please.
Hey, Whitney. Hey, everyone. My name is Andy Block. I'm a distinguished architect at Red Hat. I do a little bit of everything. I really can't tell you what I can and can't do. I kind of started out in the app dev space. I do a little infrastructure, a little automation, a little security. It depends what the flavor of the day is.
Put it all in a pot, stir it up. And you got it, Andrew Block. It's so great to have you here. You're one of not too many people who are a repeat guest. Before you were on to teach about Helm, and it's such a joy to have you back. So thanks for coming back.
I'm fortunate and appreciated to bring me back. I had fun. I'm on this side of the marble this time instead of the last time where it was, oh goodness, it must have been like 2 or 3 in the morning.
Oh, because you sometimes when I think of you in my mind, honestly, I imagine you wearing like a white and red striped shirt because it's always like, where in the world is Andrew Block right now? Like you need some circle glasses and the shirt and like a beanie cap. So last time you were, it was wee hours in the morning. You were in Singapore. And this time, where are you?
A little more domestic to the United States. I'm in New York City.
Right on. And what city do you call home?
I call home in Chicago.
Chicago?
Chicago's a great city. If you've ever been there, winter time's a little harsher than others, but summertime is absolutely beautiful. Lake Michigan's great. It's one of the best reasons why I'm there. Number 2 reason why is it happens to be one of the largest airports in the world.
Yeah, I like my house near the airport in Austin, Texas. I'm going to go to Guadalajara next week. This is actually the last Enlightening episode until probably April. It's the last of the season because I'm going to start traveling to speak at conferences. But I'm going to Guadalajara. Have you been there?
I have not. I've only been to that part of the world once, and it was I was in Mexico, and it was at a college debauchery type event. We'll just leave it at that.
I'm going to keynote KCD Mexico or KCD Guadalajara, so that's exciting. And if anyone watching is in the area, please do come out and hang out. I would love to meet you.
KCDs are great. I mean, QCon number 1 is just awesome, but we know it's hard to get people to either travel to these central locations, but bringing that experience to more, local, get the kind of local flavor. That's what I love about it.
Yeah. Do you know, I like learning and talking about cloud tech has become like a part, like a kind of a big part of my identity. And so like hanging out in Austin with my friends is amazing. I love my friends. There is a lot to talk about. But like the other day at a party, one of my friends asked me about my job and I felt myself like light up, like to explain how the internet works. And but I would just like, and like I love this, like this is why I love conferences so much, because I can have these conversations with like anyone around you instead of it just being like a magical flash in the pan to be able to have this conversation.
I mean, conferences for me, I personally, I tell my team, go to conferences, go to the sessions that you really want to go. Just don't go to fill up your schedule, because honestly,
Uh-huh.
the hall tracks are what are the
Oh,
reason you go to these conferences. I say
yeah.
use the conferences as kind of a bridge to start conversations, see the individuals you want to see, support your friends. Otherwise,
Yeah.
in the halls, talk to people, especially if you're going to KubeCon. I'm going to be there, so please
I'll be there.
come,
Yeah.
come to say hi to both of us. We're definitely ones that love to talk to the community and love to just hear about what you're working on.
100%. Yeah. If you're deciding between a talk and like going to a social event, always choose the social event because the talk is recorded. You can see it later.
In years past, before more of the virtual era really kicked in terms of conferences, it was a lot
Hmm.
harder. But nowadays, more and more sessions are recorded, and worst case scenario, the slides are always available. So
Yeah.
regardless if it's not available in a video format, you'll at least see the content.
Right on. So I'm super psyched to talk about SOPS. So you may or may not, I don't think I told you this, Andrew, but this is the last of a series I'm doing on CNCF security tools.
Okay.
So as far as I know, I've done an Enlightning episode about every CNCF security tool that will have me. There are a couple who told me no.
Ooh, who would do that?
I know. It's nothing personal, nothing about me. Just they are too busy or for whatever reason, maybe don't want the attention. But like Teller was just silent. Like I couldn't even get someone from Teller to reply to a message. So I don't know why that happened. And then the other one was Container SSH. Well, they're just too busy. Not personal. They're just busy. It's like some of the smaller projects, especially when the maintainers maybe don't do it as their full-time job, they can get overwhelmed and really busy and then don't have time for stuff
I
like
can
that.
relate to that.
I had a feeling you maybe could.
It's that balancing the work life, the personal life, the content, and open
Uh-huh.
source contribution. It's always keeping everything up in the air.
Yeah, you're juggling. Yes. And so actually, that leads me. I'm going to start moseying over to the other computer and get behind the light board. So maybe that's something you can elaborate on is like your particular open source contributions. What does that look like? Like, what communities are you in terms of open source? I would love to hear the open source side of Andrew
Yeah,
Block,
yeah.
please.
So I had an opportunity some time back to be able to really get involved in the Helm community. Helm is a package manager for Kubernetes, and that is a area in particular that I personally have been fortunate enough to become a maintainer over time. I've been championing a lot of the work around OCI and being able to use and store Helm charts in registries, because I feel very passionate about how we can access content. When you think about accessing content, I work with a lot of organizations, and getting content into a Git repository or some other repository and setting up additional infrastructure is very difficult or not even allowed in certain environments. And by going in and standing up and leveraging OCI, you can use a lot of the infrastructure that's already available, like a container registry, because especially if you're working with Kubernetes, you're most likely going to be integrating a container registry into your workflows. Otherwise, you wouldn't be using Kubernetes. And by using a tool, concepts like OCI, you can use a single backend and then be able to store any type of content, whether it be container images, whether it be Helm charts, whether it be signatures, if we're talking about signing content. So in addition to Helm, I'm also a maintainer on the Auras project. Auras is the OCI registry as storage project. And what that provides is tooling to be able to interact with OCI registries. I learned about that working with Helm, and I worked on becoming a maintainer. In addition to that, extending into that is a lot of the work I'm doing in the CNCF tag app delivery community. And actually this week, I was added as a chairman of the TAG working group Artifacts. And we're doing a lot of the work around, there's a lot of overlap, as you can probably imagine, around OCI, around applications themselves, Helm, other package management tools, and utilizing OCI as a way to be able to store, search, and retrieve content. So doing a lot of work there. And in addition to that, and doing a lot of work on the security side of things. I've been working heavily in the SigStore community, mainly, ironically, on their Helm integration. So really doing a lot of work around that space, trying to get out into the community, showing how you can use open source technology, how you can then, and I focus a lot, obviously, on the enterprise. I do work at Red Hat, so a lot of my customers are enterprise customers. So what it will take to get open source projects and make them so they can be run successfully in a more regulated type industry, whether it be your generic enterprise or ones that have heavier restrictions, and it's much more difficult to get infrastructure and other resources. So those are really the areas that I focus on specifically. So looking forward to continuing to work with all of you in the community and just going from there. I know Whitney's just working through getting her infrastructure stood up, and she's giving me some thumbs up. I mean, she can probably hear me now. Whitney, can you hear me? Not yet. Okay. I love ad-libbing like the best of them. You back now? Now you're muted. You're still muted. Tap the mic. Maybe.
I'm doing the good old fashioned turn it off and on again strategy.
Oh, it works. It's the Windows strategy. It usually works great. Technology is wonderful when it works, but when it doesn't, sometimes can be a challenge. Whitney also mentioned that I do travel quite a bit. I do speak at a number of conferences, everything from open source to I have customers globally, which is why you hear, Andy was in Singapore, Andy's over in Europe. Well, I have customers that I work with globally. So not only do I work with these wonderful enterprise customers to showcase a lot of the great things we're doing in the open source community, but also obviously at Red Hat. But I get a chance to meet all these wonderful people and get a chance to meet all these different communities. And then, for me, I care about the communities that are usually the ones that don't get the loudest voice. And then I try to work with them and try to elevate them, to try to build them up to do more, get out in the community, become more of a public presence so that they can get their contributions recognized.
Thank you so much for your patience.
No problem.
Now I'm restarting the laptop and the light board at the same time. So
you're going ahead and just ripping out the cord.
And somehow I managed to turn my speaker on too. Okay, we're doing the thing. I'm gonna mute myself again, and I'll be. I like that. With this angle, now that I have two computers, you can see me trying to troubleshoot everything in the background.
Yeah, I know how that
exactly. All right, I'm gonna keep going. Thank you so much for talking about your life and your super cool life. Yeah, thank you. I'm still going.
All right, she's gonna go ahead and run back, try to get things working again. Hope for the best, because technology is wonderful. Let's hope so. I don't want to get too much into the SOPS world yet, because I know Whitney has a ton of questions regarding that. Helm is something that I'm also working with. If you haven't had a chance to do any of the work around Helm and have played around with it, the community is incredibly passionate. It's got a huge community of Kubernetes. A lot of my customers use it. A lot of the tools that my customers, but also the community, is built upon Helm. People say Helm, there's a lot of different new technologies out there, but the best part about Helm is that it just works. It's one of those, strengthened, hardened technologies that I almost use the analogy of a Ford. Ford, in most cases, it works always. A Honda, same thing. You go into more of the exotic cars, the Teslas, the newer stuff, things don't always work all well. You can always kind of fall back to that just good old tool that always works. SOPS actually is kind of one of those. We'll get into this when Whitney gets back to the whiteboard. Oh, I see a second monitor. Oh.
Woo!
All right, she's got that running.
And you can hear me?
I can hear you. You're a little far away, so I'm not sure if it's picking up your other mic.
Let me. Investigate. No, we're just AirPods.
Okay,
We're
there we
AirPods out
go.
the way.
It's
This is
getting
a
better.
mic here, but it's very bouncy and I never use it. All right, so I'm just going to remove this and do that from here.
Oop.
When I got a second computer over here, it was supposed to make my life easier. And I actually spend a lot of time every morning. I connect everything, make sure it's working. I restart it. Like I do a lot to like try to set myself up for success. And there's something about like the world knows when we're live. And it's
Oh, of
just
course.
like,
It's always the demo gods never work out. You know how it is.
yeah. Yes. Well, thank you for your patience, everyone. And SOPS. So I'm really excited to learn about SOPS. It seems, correct me if I'm wrong, sometimes I get this wrong, but it seems straightforward. Is that?
One of the best parts about SOPS and one of the worst parts about SOPS is it is incredibly simple. I use all these different. If you're coming from the Kubernetes world, Kubernetes, it's complex. Everyone says, "Oh, it's easy." It's like, no, it's not. It's complex. And I tell my customers that, yeah, it's complex, but if you know how to use it right, you have the right tools, the right processes. Guess what? It's not that bad. But SOPS, it's dumb easy. It's straightforward, and we'll talk about how you can go ahead and start getting started with it, but also how you can get involved in the community afterward. So it's a whole bunch of topics we're going to talk about today. Whitney, I cannot wait to share it with you and the community.
I love at the beginning of these to get some context, really like what the world was like before SOPS arrived on the scene, like caused it to need to get created. But another one I want to unpack right now is the word on the street about SOPS, before I found some people to talk about it, was that it's a dead project.
Dead.
Here you are.
Here I am. Yeah. Why am I here? How am I here?
Yeah, you're alive.
Well, I think so.
Yeah.
So SOPS was started under the Mozilla Foundation. And Mozilla did a lot of great work. A lot of good things came out of when they were under the Mozilla Foundation. It basically brought this project to life. But like many open source projects, guess what happens? You have organizations, groups who have other priorities. They moved on. They're focusing on other things. Yeah. That's kind of what ended up happening with SOPS. SOPS was somewhat stable, mature, didn't really need a ton of new features. So, new kid on the block, Mozilla and their communities and their organizations had different priorities and prerogatives. So guess what? They didn't really want to invest in it anymore. So the good news is
SOPS is straightforward. It's good.
That's kind of what it is. I mean, the challenge is the community saw ways to improve. It's open source, so how can we go ahead and continuously improve it? Every project in some way will be able to be improved to somebody. Well, the pull requests, the issues started bubbling up. Things, the vulnerabilities really started, getting bad because you got to update all your software. All the dependencies got to update. You're using an older version of Go. You name it. So let's go ahead and let's see how can we make this thing more secure. How can we get a community behind it? And guess what? That's what we ended up doing. We ended up going ahead and allowing the CNCF to bring it in as a sandbox project. It's currently now under a sandbox project of the CNCF. So it's not only did we not only migrate it out of Mozilla's possession, it's champion, it's ownership, but in the same time we've got a whole new set of maintainers to maintain the project, but also the CNCF now brought it in as a sandbox project.
Okay. Is that relatively recent that happened?
About 6-8 months ago. It's relatively recent, but still, it's a little older.
Yeah. And then, okay, so how long has SOPS actually existed? Like, when did it get made?
That's a great question. I was going back to the repository. We're talking at least 6-7 years. It is not new. It's old. Okay. Or it's aged well, like a fine wine.
It may have come around about the same time as Kubernetes itself, but this is not a Kubernetes specific tool.
No, that's one of the best parts because my customers, they're adopting Kubernetes quite a bit. The community is adopting it, but I keep telling everyone, the world is not Kubernetes. It's not. There's a whole other world out there. I have folks out there who are using VMware and they're not even looking at Kubernetes whatsoever. They're using SOPS. So they can go ahead and solve their use case.
All right. So paint me a picture like 6 or 7 years ago before SOPS existed. What problems are people bumping into?
How do I store sensitive data, configuration
Uh,
data, passwords,
uh-huh.
you name it? The world of declarative configurations, infrastructure as code is starting to get some interest. So how can we store and maintain these more sensitive resources more securely?
Okay. So it's not just storing sensitive data, because there's something about the declarative nature of this
Yeah,
that seems to be
stores
important.
it stores files. So basically, it doesn't store,
Uh-huh.
but it allows you to encrypt and decrypt files. And these can
Okay.
be any type of files. These can be text files. They can be YAML files. It can be unstructured and structured data.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the best parts about that, is that you can actually, and we can get to more of the specifics a little later on, is you can actually go into that structured data and say what
Uh-huh.
keys, what areas that you want to encrypt and which ones you don't.
So we need to not only store sensitive data, but store it within the configuration file that.
Yeah, so what ends up happening is it allows you to update in place. So you take
Mm-hmm.
a file, let's say I have a text file, hello world, it says. You can go in
Mm-hmm.
and basically take and just, in place, update the content, and it'll encrypt it.
So how are people sharing and storing configuration files?
That's the good question. So when you think about how you manage infrastructure as code, you're probably going to store it in a source code management system, Git,
Uh-huh.
SVN, you name it. How are you going to store those more sensitive assets? You can go
Uh-huh.
ahead and leverage a tool like, a tool like Cloud Secret Store. You can leverage tools like Azure Key Vault. But in
Uh-huh.
many cases, how do you get started?
Uh-huh.
I want to just be able to quickly encrypt some files. I don't want to stand up an entire vault system. I want to just go ahead and use a tool and just
Yeah.
be able to encrypt and decrypt on the fly. You
Uh-huh.
can eventually get to more of those enterprise grade solutions, but let's start small. I am Joe Schmo developer. I just want to encrypt my data. I don't want to stand up any additional software. I just want it to store my passwords so I can go ahead and be able to talk to my target server, you name it, whatever, or system. I want to authenticate to a Git repository. That's my username and password in there.
Okay. So the world was like, okay, infrastructure as code is really becoming a thing, but there's sensitive information in there. So we can't have everyone seeing it.
Correct.
But then there's a problem sharing and storing these files. And
Correct.
enterprise grade solutions like HashiCorp Vault and whatever are coming into place. But sometimes that's not only high effort, but also more than you need. It's overkill.
It's overkill.
So that's
Exactly.
where SOPS puts on the superhero cape and like flies in to save the
Exactly.
day.
Exactly.
So what is SOPS is one of those weird projects too, where the acronym's more well known. If you said secrets operations to someone, they might not know what you're even
I
talking
guarantee
about.
they wouldn't know. Like I find like SOPS, like everyone has heard of it. They may not have
Yeah.
used it, but it's just one of those things that it's just there. People have heard of
Yeah.
it. It's one of those reliable projects, and there's a number of integrations. We'll get into some of the ways that they get integrated in the past.
Okay. So let's give a nice definition of what is SOPS.
SOPS is a tool for encrypting and decrypting files at a
And
30,000 foot view. That's it.
And when you say it's a tool, does it
It's a
take
binary.
is that
It's a binary.
what does that mean
It's an
exactly?
executable that you execute from a command line.
Okay.
At
Got it.
its simplistic form. There are other
Okay.
integrations that have abstracted it and wrapped it
Uh-huh.
in its own specifics. And we'll get into some of the different integrations that these other tools have with SOPS.
So SOPS is a tool that encrypts and decrypts files.
That's it.
Cool.
That is it. It sounds so straightforward and simple, but that in a nutshell is it.
CRYPT. And then binary that you consume using the command line.
Yep.
Cool.
And it's available on multiple platforms: Windows, Linux, Mac, you name it.
CLI. Okay. So that's it. So what, I guess, like, use cases would make a lot of sense to go from here.
Use cases themselves, there are plenty. So being able to store, once again, it just comes down to what data do you need to store in a text file? It's going to be, I need to store locations of passwords. I need to store, it's really up to the user. What do you want to protect? That could be anything.
Am I in there? Okay.
It could be an SSH key that you want to encrypt and then use in your integration. That's a great use case where I have an SSH key. I need to then bring it in. I also misspoke. There's no Windows support right now, but I wanted to correct myself. But
okay.
There are actually today there is. I'm sorry. I'm confusing myself. There's Windows. I'm going back and forth myself. I was just going through the list. It's all I was looking for Windows, but it just says exe. There's Windows. There's Linux. There's multiple flavors. There's ARM. There's AMD support. So there's a whole bunch of things, as well as full secure software supply chain stuff. We really wanted to emphasize that as we brought this into the community is how can we go ahead and align to a lot of the same standards that other open source projects have.
Okay, so will you name some use cases in the slower manner so I can...
So I want to secure, maybe I want to store an SSH key.
Okay.
So I can communicate to a destination system.
So store SSH key, but it's also like, do you need to share that? Is storing and sharing a thing, or is it just the storing part that matters?
You can use it. Does have functionality to actually publish it to a remote location. It's one of those features that not a ton of people use, but does provide you an option to publish content. It basically allows you to publish content to be like stored in like an S3 bucket if you want.
Okay.
That can be used, but in most cases, if you want to encrypt a file, you then go ahead and encrypt the file and share it. Either store it within like a source code repository or share it with another individual.
Okay, so that's a use case then, like checking sensitive information into get.
That's the number one use case is how do I manage the sensitive data? You will not want to be able to store that in source code. You want to be able to encrypt it and then decrypt it at runtime or when you get it pulled up. And then we can talk to you. Well, let's say I'm in a development environment, but then let's say in my development environment, I use one type of encryption, but maybe in production, I use a different one or use a different key. That allows you to have separation of concern, saying, okay, I never want my sensitive data for production ever getting anywhere near development and vice versa.
And so therefore, only production can consume the ones made for production.
Correct.
Yeah. Cool. Are there any other use cases you'd like to mention?
Just passwords, just simple passwords.
I guess storing passwords.
Yeah, because remember, everything is just going to be a file, so it's whatever you want to store and maintain.
Storing and distributing passwords. What about revocation? What if I'm like, okay, I have a password. I'm going to put it in this file. I want you to be able to have my password. So I'm going to give you the tools to decrypt it. But then later I'm like, you know what? I don't trust that Andrew guy.
You can rotate your keys. You can basically do a rotation. It does support that.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Cool. Great. So we have some use cases. We're good here? Okay.
We're good.
What else should we know about SOPS?
A lot of it comes down to its integrations. The integrations are key. Being able to integrate with a number of different secrets backends and secret encryption tools. That's where you can really start diving into the benefits of SOPS and what it can actually integrate with.
Okay, cool.
we can go from the top and go all the way down. There's so many of them.
Okay.
So
let's do it.
let's start with the simplest. The
Okay.
simplest is, and those in the Helm community would definitely understand this one, GPG, a GPG key.
GPG key. What
Yep.
does that stand for?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me.
Yep.
The GNU Privacy Guard is the actual.
Thank you.
No problem. I knew it was coming. It's like you see that car crash coming. It's like.
Also GNU itself is an acronym, but we're gonna
Yeah,
I'm letting one go. Okay, so GPG key. What does a GPG key do for those of us who don't know?
It allows you to encrypt and decrypt content. So it's a tool.
Okay.
GPG is a encryption mechanism that allows you to be able to easily. It's probably the most lightweight encryption tool out there. Many individuals use it to actually secure email as it goes across the board. Yeah. So
Okay.
there's a lot of support for GPG in a number of different frameworks and a lot of different tools. As I mentioned, Helm has support for it. A lot of email frameworks have support for it. It's just a simple way that you can encrypt and decrypt content.
How is that different from SOPS, which sounds like it encrypts and
It's a key.
decrypts content?
It's a key manager. It doesn't actually perform.
Okay. Cool. Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then, so the next one is going to be kind of what we have started to recommend in the community is a tool called AGE, AGE.
And
it's basically a simple and modern secure encryption tool it's basically a tool. Now the key thing about the difference between that and SOPS is, that's basically just a way that you can encrypt content, and then SOPS allows you to really just focus on the files themselves.
Okay. What does AGE stand for, please?
I'm going to look that one up because that's a newer one.
I
don't know if it even has one. It has one actually.
It's just called AGE.
It's just called AGE file encryption.
AGE file encryption. Okay.
And one of the benefits of SOPS is that it will have overlap to other different tools, but what it provides is a single abstraction across multiple tools. So I can go ahead and say, and that's the key thing here, is that we're not tied to a specific tool. We're able to use a single framework. And I'm a big fan of Alton Brown. Do you know Alton Brown at all?
Yeah.
The chef?
Yeah.
There should never be a unitasker. So don't use HGPG. There should only be one unitasker in my kitchen. And do you remember what that is? I don't know if you remember Alton Brown.
A knife, probably.
A fire extinguisher.
Oh.
You can use a knife so many different ways.
Sorry, I got the wrong end of that. Yeah. Okay. A fire.
Only one unitasker.
Fabulous.
So SOPS really is the magician. It can be that the must see on TV, can do 11,000 things and more if you call now type tool.
Single abstraction across multiple tools. So some of these are related to encrypting and decrypting files, but you can use them all. You can have SOPS as your interface for every
Correct, exactly. So that's a great use case where in my my local machine, I don't want to integrate with a cloud provider's key store. I want to just be able to leverage a tool like GPG because that's light, cheap, easy. But then if we move more towards production, I want to integrate with more of an enterprise tool, like a KMS from Google or Azure or a Vault solution.
So many encryption tools for many secret management tools.
It's a way for you to encrypt content. It has integration to different key managers. So GPG is a key manager. AGE is a way that you can integrate with different key managers. Because it doesn't store it in these backend systems, it just leverages the encryption, decryption capabilities.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. And so these two are examples of key manager tools.
Yep.
Cool.
So those are the ones. So the two that we have listed right now are the ones that you can easily, work on your local development machine. I'm expecting saying if you have enough rights to install the software, enterprises have their own type of regulations. But assuming you have the rights to install GPG or a PGP key or Age, you can easily run this on your local machine. But then when we start to look into more of the enterprise solutions, that's where you start to integrate with like a cloud provider or a vaulting solution. We can talk about the different cloud providers. That's usually where we go to next, and that's going to be AWS Secrets Man. AWS is probably the number one easiest way that you can set it up. AWS KMS is number one.
Okay. Amazon Web Services.
Yep.
Key Management Service, I believe. And Findle's here. Hello, Findle. Good evening to you. Oh, yep, there you are. Hello. Glad you're here. Kiss Zelda for me, please. All right. So do we want to, should we say AWS KMS? I'm going to go ahead and spell out Key Management Service. And should we name all the cloud ones separately, or should I just put and all the cloud?
I always like being explicit because as I've gotten a chance to work with different regions, do you know how many different smaller cloud providers there are so many of them.
Don't.
I mean, we got everyone from Europe's got a ton, the Middle East has got a ton, Asia's got a ton, but it has a support for the big three. We all know the big three: Google, Azure, AWS. It has support for all three of those.
So GCP, is it GCP KMS?
It is GCP KMS, correct.
Is it Azure KMS?
Azure Key Vault.
Oh, nothing's ever that straightforward.
No, never is. I wish it was.
So I can see the vault. I can see the value. I can spell vault in having one, like if you need to interface with all of these things separately, how tedious it would be and hard to have all that knowledge.
Like in an organization, they are sometimes working with multiple cloud providers in certain cases. So how do I go ahead and have a single tool that can integrate with multiple backends?
Okay.
I always have to develop my tool to say, okay, go ahead and, in this deployment, go ahead and use this tool. But in this one, go ahead and use this tool. And it becomes a little harder on the developer. And we'll talk about how we can actually make that easier when using SOPS. And we'll get to that in a minute.
Taniwa says Age stands for actually good encryption.
Really? Well, I actually learned something new today.
That's like TOML files, like Tom's obvious minimal language or something. Taniwa says, don't ask me how I know. Oh, I do want to know how you know, especially now.
I'm very interested to know.
So, what if I have HashiCorp Vault or one of these like enterprise grade solutions? Is there still a use case for Vault, or is HashiCorp Vault solving this problem of having keys all over the place?
I guess the question I have is, you mentioned Vault, or what's the difference? Sorry. Repeat your question again. Between
SOPs, like, okay, if I have HashiCorp Vault,
yep,
can I do this? Can I have one interface for all of these things for HashiCorp Vault too? Or is there still a reason to use SOPs on top of an enterprise grade Vault? I mean,
you can. So HashiCorp Vault is another integration that
put it on the list.
Yes, needs to be added to the list. Yes, because you can use Vault to store secrets within the platform. And you can also use the transit service to be able to use its KMS capabilities as well. However, one of the benefits about this is, once again, you're already just leveraging a tool you already have and go from there.
So you could, if you have keys all over the place. You could take all the keys and put them in like a central place like HashiCorp Vault and then interface with only that. Or you could use something like SOPS, or I think Teller does the same thing, right? Where you are able to have one interface for all your different key stores
Yep,
and
exactly.
secret stores. Cool. Yes. And Findle's like, yeah, KMS is Key Vault, which is a secure place to store your keys. That is correct. And
Correct.
something like HashiCorp Vault can have more than just keys, right? That has like all,
Oh yeah, I mean,
kinds of
I
confidence.
love HashiCorp Vault. It is incredibly fully featured, etc. So a lot of my customers leverage it. A lot of organizations leverage it. A lot of depends on if you're working in a cloud provider. One of the benefits about Vault is that it allows you to support both on-prem and in the cloud.
Should we put on-prem and on-prem on the list?
No, because I mean, because on-prem basically can be implemented by, Vault can be run on-prem. It can be run.
Okay.
You can also, use like tools like Azure Arc and other tools, but they're not as well known.
Okay. Do we want to add anything else to the list?
Those are the big ones. Let me double check and make sure I'm not missing anything. I probably am, just because that's who I am. But at least right now, that's the big ones.
Cool. I'm gonna write and more because
and more, yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. Cool. So right now I'm thinking this makes a lot of sense, especially like checking sensitive files into Git makes a lot of sense. Being able to integrate these things, having one interface for all of that makes a lot of sense. One thing that anytime a CLI tool comes up, I'm starting to associate it with a DevOps pipeline, like a CI/CD pipeline.
Yep.
How does this work with the CI/CD pipeline?
So that's where you can just to you what you just said, being able to encrypt and decrypt contents. So let's say you have a CI pipeline, you commit something into Git, you check it out, it needs to run some integration tests. How do I go ahead and integrate with the backend? Maybe I need to authenticate to AWS from a source that isn't natively going to be able to leverage it. How do I get my access keys to be able to authenticate to AWS? It can be stored in SOPS. SOPS can be using, let's say, GPG. For simplicity, you can do a million different ways to do it. You can then unencrypt the contents of the secrets and then be able to then communicate to a backend.
So the cool. So then like the CI/CD tool, like Jenkins or whatever,
Jenkins,
Texon,
GitHub Actions, you name it, can all integrate to this. There are a number of GitHub Actions. You can create your own, Jenkins integrations. There's so many different ways. That's the simplicity of this, is that you can easily integrate this into whatever tool you're using because it's straightforward.
Yeah. So Thindle has a question. Thindle, is KMS is Key Vault? Yes. I've been trying to catch up with the acronyms. We didn't have one for age, but I guess I could add that now. KMS stands for Key Management Service. I'm 90% sure the S is for service. Yes. And
it is.
Azure, let's see. If you come in knowing nothing, trying to learn the different things between the different cloud providers. I understand, Thindle. So you're talking about like Key Vault for Azure is basically the same thing as
they are all analogous. It's just its own supporting service, or whatever they call it. But they all provide mainly the same functionality.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good question. And I appreciate you asking and coming in knowing nothing and being here. Thank you.
Yep.
So so maybe like CI/CD pipeline is a good use case.
Oh yeah.
It's
CI/CD pipeline, deployments, runtime, anything can really be used. It really depends on, the hardest part is its use case. There's so many different use cases. It's really up to why do I need to protect sensitive assets, and in what cases.
Yeah.
But the big one is like database passwords. I need to be able to integrate a database password. I need to be able to then store that appropriately. One of the things that I always say is, don't store secrets and sensitive data for a long time, but how can I inject them at runtime if necessary? So what I've actually had some organizations do is to store their credentials in Git, bring those in, store those as like secrets in Kubernetes, and at runtime it's able to actually decrypt it.
Integrate secrets into CI/CD pipeline.
Or in a GitOps tool.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about, that's one of the big integrations, is it's GitOps integration, especially we're talking Kubernetes. There's a, when we get to that point, we can then start talking about.
Am I writing too big?
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay.
You can, I mean, the thing is, probably, but it's okay.
Okay.
I know we talked a little bit beforehand. It's like, oh, we don't have a ton of stuff, but honestly, when you start to, peel the onion away, you start to actually see that there's a lot more functionality in this little tool.
It's nice. It's exciting.
It is.
So, Taniwa said they couldn't find an original source on the age acronym. So it may be a backronym. I've never heard that expression. Or it may have been something the author said. He implemented it on Twitch, apparently. Oh, exciting.
Interesting.
You know what acronym I learned recently that I really like is JOMO, which is
JOMO.
Yeah, instead of fear of missing out, it's joy of missing out.
Interesting.
I feel that sometimes. Yeah. Like, oh, I decided not to speak at that conference. I see on Twitter everyone's having a great time. I'm really happy for them. I'm also glad I'm home. Awesome. So we want to say more about GitOps tools.
Yeah. So GitOps tools. Yeah. So there's a big one. There's going to be KSOPS. KSOPS is a way, it's a kind of a wrapper, it's a generator for customize. So you can integrate customize into SOPS. So when you do your customized build, it's able to encrypt and basically it runs SOPS under the covers.
Cool.
But you don't actually run SOPS directly. You just do a customized build and it wraps it all for you. So
KSOPS is what? It's an add-on?
It's a generator for customize.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I had to brush off my customized knowledge.
I know exactly. Blow up the dust a little bit.
Okay. So cool. So customize, for those of us who did a customized episode a long time ago and need refreshing, a customized generator helps you generate something related to your configuration.
Yeah. So customize itself is a tool for managing Kubernetes assets. So being able to generate those really easily. You're able to have, there's a number of included generators in customize, but you're able to actually add and extend your own generator. The KSOPS project, it's a extension of a generator, so it basically allows you to say, customize says, okay, I see these resources. I know that I don't know how to generate them, but this other tool does. So pass it off to the other tool and give me back some manifests. And that's basically what it does. Is there's a KSOPS itself is a binary itself. So what it does is it will allow you to use that tool to then call out to SOPS. So it's kind of you go from one tool to the next tool to the next tool, but in the end they all work together in cohesion.
So basically you can pull your secrets into your customization, customized.
So basically what ends up happening is you're able to store and manage your sensitive assets. Let's say you want to encrypt a Kubernetes secret or at least part of some of the values, and then be able to use that in your GitOps tool and then realize those values in Kubernetes.
So I want to make that's like just an example use case, though.
It's an example use case, exactly.
Okay, so we repeat that example. You encrypt your Kubernetes secret. And then what?
You encrypt it, and then you can store that in Git. That's one of the benefits about that is that you don't have in plain text values in Git. You have just the encrypted values in Git, and you're able to use whatever tool, whatever backend. So any one of the integrations that you mentioned, you can bring those into your GitOps pipeline.
It feels like SOPS is like glue.
It is kind of glue. It's basically going ahead and providing the way to bring in all these different tools together and make your entire pipeline more, just your entire system more secure.
I hear your Slack blowing up over there.
Oh, did it actually coming through? Oh, that's weird. That's really weird.
Oh yeah. So I like that. I like SOPS as a glue, like all these different tools, like because it's like a single purpose thing, but it feels like it can connect so many things in so many situations.
That's
that
right.
It's a little overwhelming. Like I'm a little I understand it, and I'm a little overwhelmed by the possibility at the same time.
That's
like,
one of the benefits of SOPS is that if you want to use it for something simple, dumb, I want to encrypt the file, decrypt the file, easy, simple. But you can go ahead and use that foundation to integrate it into your existing workflows. That's where the power comes in. It's very much like Helm. I look into, Helm's great in similar use cases where, if I want to just go ahead and run it on my local machine, just generate and templatize manifest, great. But if I want to integrate it into a GitOps tool, there's a lot of great GitOps solutions, Argo CD, Flux, they're able to integrate it more natively.
SOPS is like glue to integrate tools and workflows.
I like that.
I
like that a lot. Hey, it works.
Yeah. That's cool. What else would you like to say?
So now we talked about the integrations. Now, how do I actually use the dang thing? That's the most important thing.
I'm writing that down word for word. How do I actually use the dang thing?
Exactly. Tell me what you really do here, sir.
What would you say you do here?
Yep.
All right. I'm with you.
So by itself, you can do everything with just the CLI. There's nothing specific within the location where your sensitive assets happen to be located. So the SOPS CLI contains a number of flags that allow you to specify exactly what backend you're communicating with. So if I'm communicating with GPG, you can put the public key that you want to encrypt and decrypt from. I can do the same thing of the AWS KMS resource that you want to integrate with. Those are all CLI flags.
So CLI flags enable you to do what?
And it basically allows you to specify what backend you want to encrypt.
Okay.
So you use the SOPS, -E for encrypt, -D for decrypt, and then you specify the backend, --PGP, and then the value, or -P, depends on what if you want to do the shorthand or longhand.
And then are all of the possible backends built in, or is that something when you configure your CLI to manage whatever particular backends you intend to use?
The libraries are built in. You don't need to add anything else. You just have to specify the flags and the specific configurations. So if I need to integrate with a GPG key, you need to specify the public key you want to integrate with.
Okay.
You want to use.
Cool. Is that it? That's how you use the dang thing?
That's pretty it, but the best part about this is you can go much deeper. And one of the best parts about this is you can create a .sops.yaml file in the current
Mm-hmm.
directory that you're running the SOPS command. And then
Mm-hmm.
depending on the configuration, you don't have to specify any flags. You can basically take that and say SOPS encrypt, and based on the location of the file that you are
Mm-hmm.
referencing, it will know what backend and how to encrypt and decrypt it.
Mm-hmm.
So you can make your CI/CD pipelines really reusable and abstract. You can just say SOPS encrypt, and then based upon that configuration, you can then specify, okay, let's say I have a good example of this is, let's say I'm working in an AWS environment. I'm working in
Mm-hmm.
AWS. I have a GitOps repository, and it has 4 different folders, simplistically: a dev, a stage, a production, and a local. Let's say my local environment has GPG keys, and I can go ahead and use my GPG key to be able to encrypt and decrypt. Let's say in my dev environment, I have my AWS KMS for my dev instance. I have tests for my test instance, and so on and so forth. And you can specify based on that configuration that any of the files in these folders reference the specific KMS and specific backend you want to integrate with.
Okay. So this SOPS.yaml file is a way to configure your instance of SOPS without using flags.
Correct.
So it's reusable and shareable.
Exactly.
The configuration. Cool.
Because I mean, the idea is that I want to build a very generic pipeline. I don't want to build up with logic saying, okay, in my dev environment, I want to use these flags. In my other environment, I want to just specify SOPS encrypt.
Okay.
And then based on the source code content, go ahead and be able to integrate and be able to encrypt and decrypt as you need to.
Cool. Awesome.
So there's basically allows you to create what inside that file you create what they call creation rules, and then it's basically just a part of the actual manifest itself, and then there's an array of different rules that you have, and you can specify the backend, specify the path within the location of where that file is located, and then you can then look into how we manage structured data. So I can only encrypt and decrypt certain fields. That's where you can specify what fields you want to encrypt and not decrypt.
Okay. So so let's maybe just make a list of the configurable stuff, the knobs. Does that sound good?
Yeah, sure.
Or do you have other idea? Okay.
I mean, that's
SOPS configuration knobs. When you say backend,
when I say backend, I mean integrations. One of the integrations, exactly.
Okay, that's what I thought, but it's good to be explicit, like you said. So tell me some knobs. So backend, which is like a integration.
Yeah. So basically, any of the integrations. So we talked about all the different flags that are out there. We didn't actually go into every single one of them. We can then look at which actual keys you want to encrypt. You can actually specify which keys should be encrypted and which are decrypted. So we're talking about JSON or YAML files or like Kubernetes secrets. I don't want to necessarily encrypt the API version, the group. I want to just encrypt just the data fields. So which makes it much more readable, because if you encrypt the entire file, you just get a very generic, encrypted block. You get some human readable information, but not as much. Versus if I go ahead and specify just the fields I want, the unencrypted values, the API version, the name, the namespace, for example, we're talking Kubernetes, those are still in plain text, but only the encrypted values are the actual data fields.
So a backend, how do you authenticate with the backend with SOPS? Is that part of this SOPS.yaml? Does the SOPS.yaml need SOPS to encrypt part of its own?
So if you're working if you're working like in an AWS environment, you're gonna most likely, let's say I'm using my local machine. I want to just encrypt and decrypt. I'm gonna have usually either be already authenticated to the AWS CLI, or I have the environment variables that allow you the AWS profile key, the AWS secret key. Those are already be available to you. And then based upon the ARN that you're gonna actually specify inside your SOPS configuration, it's gonna know to talk to this backend, grab the key, be able to decrypt the content.
What does ARN stand for?
Azure resource name, I believe it is. Or pardon me,
Okay.
AWS, Amazon resource name, not Azure.
Okay. So basically, it's running in an environment that's already authenticated
Correct.
to the backend, so
It's
it
going to
doesn't
assume that it
have to
already has
worry about that
access
part.
to whatever store it needs to integrate with.
And then presumably, it's reaching out to these different APIs. Presumably, they structure their data in different ways, but that's part of like how SOPS is configured to already know
It
where
knows
to
you
go.
don't have to know how to wire up how to talk to these backends. You just need to say,
Okay.
okay, these backends, I'm using the native capabilities of these tools to then be able to then talk to these backends.
Okay, cool. So you can configure which backend you talk to. You configure which keys to encrypt. What else can you configure as part of?
As I said, you can then talk about how you can rotate. So we talked about key rotation. You can do a complete key rotation. You can specify where you want the encrypted and decrypted content to go. So by default, it's going to print it out as output. It's not going to update a file. It's just going to print it out as output. You can also say, go ahead and update the content in line. So if I have a file and I'm referencing it, go ahead and just update that file immediately. Don't just print it out to the command line.
That's wise. That's cool. And then you said, what did you say right before that?
Probably rotate it, key rotation.
Yeah. So, and that's something you could be like, how often you can tell SOPS how often to rotate keys?
No, you have to just say, hey, I want to rotate the key.
Okay.
So let's say in an environment, you might have a scheduled job that runs every 30 days, for hypothetical situation.
Okay.
And it knows how to update the keys.
Okay. Manual key rotation. Manually tell what's because key rotation is a little too generous, I think, of a thing to say.
What do you mean?
Because you can't be like, because you can't be too specific about it. You have to say, in this moment, I want to rotate keys.
Correct. Yeah, there's no scheduled. Remember, it's just a binary, so basically you'd have to execute it anyways. It's not being stored anywhere. You basically need to say, okay, I want to re-encrypt this data with this key.
I want to rotate keys now, in quotes. That's how I rotate cool. And then the key that's being rotated is not the key that's stored.
No, it's the key that's being, it's basically, what you typically will end up doing is that you're going to update the key, and then you need to update the encrypted content that associates to that key.
The encrypted content that is, so you're like a field in your
configuration.
Correct,
exactly. File. Yep. You're gonna basically just do a re-encryption of that data.
So really, I want to, okay, key equals.
It's basically just do a complete re-encryption of the data.
Okay. So instead of saying I want to rotate keys now, I would like to re-encrypt the data here. Correct. This data. Okay. Yeah. Cool. How do I actually use the dang thing? This is how.
Yeah, exactly. And we talked about, using like customize. That's layer 1 of the onion. Layer 2 would be, okay, how do I go ahead and use customize within a tool like Argo CD? So basically, because Argo CD can integrate natively with customize, how can I go ahead and take a lot of the capabilities that SOPS has, its integration with KSOPS, and how do I integrate that into Argo CD? So you can create what they call a config management plugin to be able to abstract that. So we can maybe just go into some of the GitOps tools, because I want to talk about 2 of them. One of them is Argo CD, which is I can create a config management plugin that allows you to use, basically take the KSOPS project and integrate that into your Argo CD workflow, so that when you're generating the manifest, it knows that it needs to call the KSOPS module and then being able to, based on your configurations, unencrypt the data. So it generates the appropriate Kubernetes manifest.
So basically, both Flux and Argo CD already integrate well with Kustomize, and because they do, therefore they integrate well with SOPS.
To an extent. To an extent.
Okay.
So, Argo CD, pardon me, you need to create a config management plugin. So that's
Okay.
on you to create. It's not part of the product. Flux has native capabilities to leverage Flux, to leverage SOPS. You don't need to leverage Kustomize at all. You're able to just leverage it generically. Or, pardon me, specifically.
So with Argo CD, you give it a config management plugin, and then it can use KSOPS.
Yep. Or in reality, it can use it. You don't need to necessarily bake it into KSOPS. You can use it with Helm if you need to. It can get integrated into another config management plugin. A config management plugin is just a extension point for Argo. So it's not it's not tied to KSOPS. KSOPS is
it's more generic than that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can even go ahead and just make it even more generic, because a config management plugin, its capability allows you to basically generate manifests. Whatever tool you use under the covers is whatever tool you need.
So then you can.
KSOPS is a good example of it, of how you can use it.
Okay. Maybe then it can use and then you use KSOPS and among other things.
Correct.
Would that be more accurate?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. You said you had two. Is Flux the second?
Flux is the second one, correct.
All right. And how does it work with Flux?
It's got native functionality as part of Flux itself. There's no real additional component that you need to build on to bake in. You can just leverage it as one of its security backends.
Native KSOPS functionality?
No, just native Flux. It's natively built into Flux.
SOPS is natively built into Flux.
Correct.
Cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And what does that mean? Like a Flux CLI, you could use, once you install that, then therefore you could use SOPS commands?
Once you install Flux itself onto a cluster and you configure it within the whatever source repository you need, it's able to automatically, once you set up Flux, you don't have to build anything new into it. Like you got to build on a custom config management plugin. This is already just built into the product.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
And Tani, wow, you've really gone down a rabbit hole, friend. I found age in the original spec in an archive.org Google Doc snapshot from 2019. You're impressive, Taniwa. So here's the link to that. It does stand for actually good encryption, and it's pronounced with the A, a hard G. Like instead of age, like agahi, agihi.
I call it age. How do you say GIF? GIF, you name it.
Actually good encryption. I'll write that on the board. He worked so hard to find the source of that acronym. It deserves to be documented. So now the next person who wants to look it up only has to go as far as this
exactly
episode, all the way back to 2019. That's awesome. Thank you, Tani. Well, that was enjoyable. Okay. I think because I don't quite feel I'm saying agahi like that's proper, I think I might just stick with age too.
If you say Gavi, I'm just going to say agave, which is no tequila, but that's another story.
Aghi? Is that what that says?
I don't know.
Okay, let's stop.
In a nutshell, you've covered the SOPS world. It can do more, but at this point,
Yeah.
this will cover probably about 90 to 95% of the use cases that most users will have with it.
So I'm a DevOps person. I have secrets everywhere. I need to be able to I want to use Git as a way to share and store files, especially since I'm probably migrating to GitOps if I haven't already.
Yep.
And so SOPS is a great tool for that. It also solves the problem of my secrets are all over the place, and I can have now one way to pull secrets from wherever and then put them into Git files and then enable GitOps.
Yep.
And that's like
That's your 30,000-foot view over the world.
that's what
And one of the best parts, as I said, about SOPS is it doesn't require a lot of startup, because you don't need to have all this other infrastructure in place. You have the capabilities to start integrating with them, but you don't need it. As I mentioned, I have many infrastructure guys that are just using it as part of their typical CLI, on their VMs. They're not even using the cloud. They're not even using any tool. They just want to be able to encrypt content. Maybe after they can use the Agave, whatever you want to call it, GPG, easily, because that's going to be typically built in. At least the GPG functionality is natively built into many operating systems out of the box, or it can be easily integrated with a package manager to be able to install it.
Great. So I think that's something I would like to catch in maybe here or one of these little spaces is you kind of mentioned on-prem, cloud, Kubernetes, not maybe how unrestricted it is. What's how generic? What are the words? Help me.
I mean, the best part about this is you can do it to say, I don't want my coworker we happen to share accounts to look at my content. So I'm going to go ahead and manage it a little differently. So nice. I can save my little crib notes in a way they can never see it. Because they may have root access on my box. Well, they have root access on my box. They have access to a little bit of everything, but you get the idea. Is that I want to at least protect
my nosy coworker.
Let's say I have a nosy coworker who doesn't really know tech too often, but he's able to at least browse files. I can at least protect that.
Cool. But that's I think I still want to say something about how generic it is in terms of where it can be used versus cloud versus legacy versus Kubernetes or not.
It can be used in any environment, whether it be I want to work on a server, I want to work on my laptop, I want to work in a cloud provider, I can't say it works on the mainframe because I haven't tested it. I doubt it does. But you can at least store sensitive assets to be able to be used to manage a mainframe, let's say a password to your TSO account, for example.
Almost all environments.
Yep. I mean, it is all environments. I mean, as I mentioned, you can store a password that you authenticate to a mainframe.
Okay. So I'll say cloud, on-prem. I'm not gonna. I think mainframe is too generous too. On-prem, Kubernetes.
Yep.
And more. I feel like I'm learning from doing this show not to say too always include a possible add more on or it depends. Never say this is the end all be all.
It's always a depends. Always a depends.
Yeah. Cool. Well, is it time to do the recap part of this episode to make sure?
I think it is. I mean, we've covered almost everything. So let's go ahead and let's kind of run through what did we talk about today?
Yeah, let's do it. So everything you taught me, and then if anyone has any questions, now's the time. So first we started by you painted a picture for me of what the world was like before SOPS existed. SOPS stands for Secrets Operations, but this is one of the projects where if you say Secrets Operations to somebody, they probably don't know what you mean. Everyone just calls it SOPS.
Right.
So there are problems with like how should we store sensitive data? Declarative infrastructure as code was becoming a thing. And so how are we going to share and store config files containing secrets? There are enterprise grade solutions like HashiCorp Vault, but those can be high effort and they can be overkill. And then they don't always solve, I'm going to call it secret sprawl, where secrets are all over the place, all over your system. So then SOPS came into being. SOPS is very simple, actually. It's just a tool that encrypts and decrypts files. So it is a binary that you consume via a CLI. And so after having all this conversation, I feel like SOPS is like glue to integrate tools and workflows. Like on one hand, I feel like a tool that decrypts and encrypts files is like so easy to understand. But then when we started talking about all the things it does, I got a little overwhelmed because it's so easy, but then there's so many places to apply it that it was a little much
But
for a
that's the
moment.
best part about this is if you're coming in with not a lot of experience and you just want to get started, you don't have to go in to all those integrations. You can just stay very high
Yeah,
level and generic.
that's
So
a great point.
so you can do it, but you can stay nice and simple.
Yeah. So then we talked about some use cases. Like just like you said, nice and simple. The first thing is like what data do I want to share in a text file? And even at the end, you said this use case of like, I don't want my like I shared an account with my coworker. I don't want them to read what I'm writing in my digital diary. So I'm going to encrypt it and decrypt it. So it's just for me, but still share it on our shared Google Drive account or whatever. But you could store and share SSH keys. You can check sensitive data into Git, which is super huge, and we'll get into it, but that enables GitOps. So it encrypts and decrypts then at runtime. You can store and distribute passwords. You can use SOPS as an interface for one or many of all these different key management tools, key and secret management tools. You could integrate a database password. You could integrate secrets into a CI/CD pipeline or into GitOps. Those are some use cases. And then hide data from your friends and family is the last one. So that's awesome. And then back onto this GitOps to customize. Customize has an abstraction called a generator, and there's a customized generator called KSOPS to integrate SOPS into customize.
One that I did not mention is Helm. Helm has a plugin called Helm Secrets that allows you to also do similar capabilities of storing sensitive data within Helm. I couldn't leave Helm out. I'm sorry, being that maintainer.
No one's asking you to. Yeah.
It's a plugin.
Helm.
I wrote a book on Kubernetes secrets, and we added a section for exactly this. We had one for SOPS. We had another call out to Helm secrets as well.
And so that helps you put secrets in your Helm charts to
Correct, exactly. So you can check those the manifests in without having to have them be plain text.
Cool. That makes so much sense. And then, so if you do that, and then you want to use your Helm chart as part of Argo CD, do you add this config management plugin?
Exactly. There's a config management plugin for the Helm Secrets plugin.
Gotcha.
You can see how this, you just go deeper and deeper in the rabbit hole, Alice.
So for GitOps, you have this customized generator called KSOPS to integrate secrets into your customized configuration files, and then you can store it in Git and use it with GitOps. Helm has a plugin for SOPS to put encrypted secrets into your Helm charts, and then you can use it for GitOps, which put it in Git, use it in GitOps. And then I guess I'll go ahead and say the GitOps part. So Argo CD needs a config management plugin that will help you be able to, just one plugin, and then you can use it for several different ways to interface with.
You would potentially, it really depends. You could create one that has all the different integrations. You could then go ahead and have multiple separate plugins. It's really up to how you want to configure it.
Okay. And then SOPS is natively built into Flux, and that applies to the SOPS in your Helm chart too, right?
At least no, because you need to have the Helm plugin.
Okay. Cool.
But at
Okay.
least the generic, I want to be able to use the SOPS native capabilities. Because remember,
Okay.
the customize and the Helm side of things is an additional plugin on top of the native SOPS.
Okay.
Yeah.
The point is you can do it, and
Yep.
and it doesn't seem like a ton of friction.
No.
People have done it before. There are plugins. There
There
are
are examples.
there are
That's
ways.
the best part of the open source community. The whole community's out there, and especially when it comes like SOPS. SOPS is out on Slack, on CNCF Slack, so you can certainly get engaged with the community. We'll talk about some of the community engagements before we close out today.
Okay, awesome. So then we went through some of the SOPS integration. So again, it's glue. It's like a single abstraction across multiple tools. So you can kind of imagine if you have keys, GPG key, you age file encryption, which age stands for actually good encryption. AWS KMS, GCP, Azure Key Vault, HashiCorp. If you try to use the interface, the native interface for all of these every time you're working with it, it can be quite a mess. So if you encrypt and decrypt everything with SOPS, have it all go through SOPS, then you only have one interface for all of this.
Yep.
So that's nice. SOPS can be used in almost all environments, so cloud, on-prem, Kubernetes, more. But then, how do I actually use the dang thing?
Yeah.
So you can do, as a human, you can do everything within the SOPS CLI. So CLI flags allow you to specify what backends you want to encrypt. So which of these to connect to. If you can go deeper and make a SOPS.YAML file to configure SOPS without flags. So that's going to be really good if you're using SOPS. And here's a production environment SOPS configuration versus a development environment SOPS configuration.
The key thing that I may have not glazed over, may have missed, it's not just SOPS.YAML, it's .sops.YAML. So it's a hidden file.
Ah.
Yeah, just want to make sure.
One more dot.
Yep.
Cool. But basically, this YAML file makes the SOPS configuration shareable and reusable, which could be great for delivery. And then we have SOPS configuration knobs. You say which backends you want to integrate with. You say which keys you want to encrypt, because you probably don't want to encrypt the entire configuration file, but only the sensitive stuff. You say where to put the encrypted and decrypted information once it's done. By default, it just prints it out to the CLI, but maybe you want to embed it back into a file or whatever. And then you say, we call it key rotation at first, but really like, hey, I want to re-encrypt the data on this line. It's been encrypted this way. I want to refresh it and re-encrypt it again. So you can say when you want it to do that. And then integration with the DevOps, which we went over already.
And there's also, in addition to that, there's a number of environment variables that you can specify for all the flags as well.
Okay.
It just makes it so that you potentially don't have to include all the different flags. You can set environment variables as well. There's another option out there.
Okay, instead of flags.
Yeah. Many of the tools in the cloud native space, as you know, have options for not only specifying explicitly within the CLI, but also to do an environment variable.
Yes. Yep. Cool. I think we did it.
We did it.
Good? All right. Oh, look, I don't like that. So SOPS is not dead. SOPS is very much alive. SOPS is part of the CNCF now.
We're not dead. We promise we're not dead.
And if you want to be a part of the community, what should you do?
So a few different things. We're really, jump-starting the community efforts in 2024. Right now, the best place to interact with the SOPS community is over on CNCF Slack. We are in the #SOPS channel. Definitely, that's the #1 place that I recommend going out there if you want to contribute on GitHub. It's github.com/gitsops/SOPS. GitSops is the name of our organization. And then we are going to be starting off a set of community meetings very soon. Probably going to be monthly or something in that time frame. We're gonna publicize that, but also we are going to start to launch a website under CNCF. So it will be there
Ooh, nice.
soon. So a lot of great things coming in 2024. Really looking forward to the community to be able to start interacting with us. We love hearing about what works, what doesn't work. We want the features to be extended even further. So let us know how you're using the tool. We want to learn your use cases. What's working well, what's not working well, how can we make it better, and then how can you have some fun?
Awesome. Well, this has been an absolute joy. Thank you so much. I'm going to start the music. Andrew and I will both be at KubeCon, so please do say hello if and when you see us there. And this is the last Enlightning episode for a while.
Oh no.
I'll see you again. Yeah.
Couple months.
Yeah, there it is. I'll see you again in April.
Yeah.
Unless I see you at Paris. I'll see you in Paris. What is life, you know? It's crazy. Thank you so much, everyone. Oh, yeah, nice you too. Thanks for coming. Thanks for those who watched the recording. I appreciate you. Bye. Thank you, Andrew.